few years ago, I did this event with one of my friends. And we drove down to Washington, D.C., and at 7 p.m., they got all of us in this room, there's 40 of us, and they handed us these backpacks. And we had to put these backpacks on, and as soon as I put it on, it was like one of the heaviest things I've ever carried. It was a weighted backpack. It felt, I think they said it was like 20 pounds, and we had to carry it. We also were given water, we were given some like light food, and we were told that that's what we had. And I knew for the next 12 hours, I was going to be continually moving. So I've never been in the military, but this was the closest I've ever been to anything that was like in like boot camp or something like this. My friends, a bunch of them have been in the military, and they heard of this group called GoRuck. And GoRuck was and is this group where they try to mentally and physically break you so you quit. So you quit this event. They like pride themselves on the fact that you are not able to make it through this event. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, I'm doing that. And I grabbed my friend who's one of the like mentally toughest and physically toughest guys I know. His name is Josh. And we decided we were going to do this event together. So we get there at 7 p.m. and they said, for the next 12 hours, our job is we're going to try and break you. And it was in, I think, January of that year. So we have this backpack and they just sent us on this run. Like we had to start to run. And then they led us to this water's edge. And they're like, wouldn't it be terrible if we forced you to go in there? And we're like, oh, it's like a 3-mile run. We're so thrilled that like, we don't actually have to go into this thing because there's ice on it. And we're like, well, clearly we can't get in there. And this guy comes with a sledgehammer, walks onto the ice and starts breaking it at the water's edge, and he says, get in it. So all of us had to get into this water, and he said, all right, I want to see 30 push-ups from everybody. And at this point in my life, it was maybe the most scared I've ever been that I was going to like pass out or like just freak out, or my mind didn't know what to do. As soon as we started doing these push-ups in the cold, it was in the Potomac River that was frozen. Like my mind started freaking out because I didn't know what in the world to do. I've never been that cold in my entire life. So we had to do the push-ups, and then they told us to get out, and they're like, start moving your arms because you're gonna hyperventilate if you don't. Hyperventilate, is that right? Hypothermia, thank you. If you don't. So we all just start moving our arms and our legs start pumping, and they sent us on another like 4-mile run. Then we got to this place around Washington, D.C., and there was this big monument there, and they said, all right, start doing lunges. You know what lunges are, right? Like this. And I was like, all right, well, I just finished P90X, I know how to do a good lunge. I'm gonna be fine. So I started doing this lunge, and I wanted to keep track because I like keep track of things, and I wanted to know how many we had to do. And I was like, 70, no problem, I can easily do that. Then we hit 80, 90, 100. Then we went to 200, 300, 400. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I can do this. We ended up doing 770 lunges around this thing, and people started like quitting. When we got out of the water, a couple people dropped off, and we started doing the lunges around 500. They started quitting because they're like, we just can't physically do it anymore. So there's about 25 of us left, and they start running us to the different monuments. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C., the monuments are pretty spread out, and we had to run to the different monuments, and then they'd make us do push-ups or sit-ups, or we'd have to like carry each other, all while we're carrying a 20-pound backpack. It was unbelievably brutal. So, like I said, we were running through the entire night. At like 3 in the morning, they gave us a break, and we were allowed to eat our sandwiches. And then we had to start running again. And then at like 4, I think it was like 4 in the morning was the first time we were allowed a bathroom break. And that was really gross because people had to go to the bathroom, so they just like wet themselves because like they didn't have anything else to do. I'd never experienced anything like that before, and it was extremely, extremely tough. And I consider myself quite an athlete, and I've run marathons and stuff like that. But this was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. It was 6:30 in the morning. We were running from 7 p.m. to 7 in the morning. The light, the sunrise came up. It was beautiful. It was exhausting. At 6:30 in the morning was the first time I was like, I cannot go anymore. My legs were shot. My back was shot. Your shoulders are shot from the weighted backpack. And I said, I can't go anymore. And the instructor said, we're done at 7 a.m. You have a half hour more. All you have to do is get to the front of the White House. That's all we had to do. And we could see it from way far away. And I knew at that point that I couldn't do it. There was no way I was going to do it. It was the first time I thought, I think I have to quit. And it was like emotional. It was really tough because I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And At that point, we're sitting on this like ledge or something, and I look at my buddy Josh, and I'm like, Josh, I can't do it. I'm getting emotional because I didn't want to quit, and I was like, oh, yeah, I can't do it. So what Josh did was, Josh stood up, he took my backpack off, and he put it on himself. And so he had 40 pounds of weight on his back. And he's like, all right, let's go. So we started walking, like there's this like type of march that we had to do. So we started walking towards the White House, and I got about halfway there, and I collapsed. I was like, I can't do it. Even without the weighted backpack, I couldn't do it. It was just too much. So Josh knelt down, picked me up, put me on his shoulders, and he and I walked to the White House together. And at 7 a.m., he took me off his shoulders, and he put me on the finish line. Oh, wow, I didn't expect all this. But he put me on the finish line, and we completed it. And it was one of the coolest things that I've ever done, because he and I got to finish this event together. And I know to this day, there's no way that I physically could have been able to do it without Josh's help. And that got me thinking a lot. This past week, we've been talking about friendship. And not just friendship, but like accountability. We're in this series called Habits, and what does that mean? It got me thinking a lot about my buddy Josh. Josh and I are good friends, and we do these like crazy events together, but that's the only circle in my life that he's a part of. I wouldn't call him if I had trouble in my marriage. I don't know, everything's fine. But I wouldn't call him for that. I wouldn't call him for parenting advice. I wouldn't call him about relationship with God advice. But if I needed someone to carry me to a finish line, I would call Josh. There's no chance I would call anybody else because of what we've been through already together. And when I think about like accountability, which is the A in habits, we start to really thinking about like who are our friends. And we spent a lot of time talking about friendship in here before, right? Like we've talked about the importance of having good friends, and we've talked about the importance of not having bad friends. And that seems really obvious, doesn't it? Like if I was like, do you guys want good friends or bad friends? You would say, of course you want good friends. But sometimes you don't realize that the friends you have are not ideal for you. Right? Does that kind of make sense? Evan, can you come down here and bring a chair with you? So there's two types of people in your life. Two types of people, whether they're friends, whether there's mentors, whether they're people that you help or teach. There's two types. There's people that bring you up, and there's people that bring you down. And we make the mistake all the time thinking that we are always going to be the one bringing people up. I've talked to a lot of high schoolers, and they're stupid enough to believe, like, I'm going to start dating this person who's not as good, maybe not a Christian, doesn't go to church, but I'm going to change them. I'm going to start missionary dating. You guys heard that term before? It's like, I'm going to date a non-Christian because I'm going to make them better. Or I'm going to get into this friendship with someone, and between the two of us, I'm going to start making them so much better. So if I'm standing here, and Evan's down there, Evan, give me your hand. What's easier? Is it easier for me to pull Evan up with me, or is it easier for Evan to pull me down? What is it? Down. It's down, right? Looking at this is pretty obvious. Because for me to get Evan, I have to almost like train to get his body weight, to figure out how in the world to get him down. Evan, pull me off the chair. That's all he has to do. All he has to do is drop his weight. Thank you. Give it up for Evan. Yeah. Tear you down, it is so much easier. For someone to bring you down from where you're at, it's so much easier than for you to bring them up. Is it possible? Absolutely. It is, but it takes a lot of effort. So we're doing habits, and last week we talked about hang time with God. I hope you guys, that meant something to you guys, and you guys spend time with Pastor Brian. I thought that was really great. I actually thought about this throughout this week, about am I doing these 4 steps? There was one that I wasn't good at, so I incorporated it, and it really helped me. But today we're doing accountability. And what it means, like the friendships you have, like are you accountable to someone? And most of us are. Like you are accountable to people, whether you realize it or not. You go to the next slide. The accountability is about caring deep friendships, not just friendships. There's a huge difference there, whether you're just friends with someone or actually having like a real authentic, deep relationship with someone. Those are two very different things. In Proverbs, it says there are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. I had a friend in high school. I think I've talked about him before. His name was Steve. And Steve was hilarious. He was really funny. He was a kid that I really wanted to be like. But one of his main things was he used to tear us down for humor's sake in front of me. I thought it was really funny. When he did it to me, it wasn't funny, but when we did it to our other friends, it was really funny. And he was that first group of friends, the friends who destroy each other. Like, we did that. Right now, he and I are not close because we didn't have a real, authentic relationship. We had a relationship that was just built on teasing and making fun of each other. Then it says, but there's real friends that stick closer than a brother. There's friends that we all have that are way more like Steve than they are like this second group. You guys got to meet one of my friends not too long ago. His name is Ryan. You guys remember when Ryan came here? I could call Ryan up at any time and he would listen to me complain about anything. Which is like what a real true friend does, right? Like I appreciate that when I can just call and vent. And then he doesn't tell me that Lance, you're doing something wrong. He doesn't come at me and say, try and fix me in that moment. He just lets me talk. And I really, really appreciate that about Ryan. So there's two different types of people. Like, who in your life? Do you guys have like my friend like Steve or like a friend like Ryan? Do you guys have people in your life that you can actually talk to about things and they'll just listen? Can you go to the slide? Go ahead. Oh, okay. No, skip this. We don't have time for this. Here we go. There's type of friends. I listed there's the three type of friends. Go back to it. I have to do it. There's three type of friends. There's first ones that are location friends. These are your friends that are at school. They sit next to you around your desk. They like are in your neighborhood maybe. These are just friends. Like one of my best friends growing up, his name was Justin. He was my best friend. He was one of the only people I knew. He was my next door neighbor. So like that's why I haven't talked to Justin in 20 years. I helped him move, and that was the last day I saw him. So that's a location friend. Interest friends. Interest friends are like I had a friend named RJ. RJ was a fantastic baseball player. He's one of the best baseball players I've ever played with. That's what interest friends are. They play the sports you play with. They like the same instruments. They're in the band. They're in like the same school activities. I haven't seen RJ in 15 years because our baseball season ended. We don't hang out anymore. Then there's this other thing called a true friend. A true friend is like my friend Coca. I've talked about him before. Coca's my best friend. Coca and I met at Bridgeport, University of Bridgeport when I went there. And when I hang out with him, when you see someone and you haven't seen him in a long time, you're like, oh, how's it going? Like, what have you been up to in the last 10 years? Like and do you feel like that kind of awkward feeling you don't really know how to interact with them? A true friend is someone that you never have to do that with. That the moment you see them, it's like you just saw them the other day. And that's my friend Coca. If I haven't seen him for 2 years, that's never happened. But if I haven't, then as soon as I see him, we just continue our relationship. We just go on from where we're talking because you don't need that oh, how have you been, that awkwardness. That's called a true friend. Now you can skip to the next thing. A true friend is someone that when you talk to them, they're not going to do certain things. They're not going to wait for you to be quiet so they can just one-up you. You guys have one-upper friends? They're very frustrating. They can't wait for you to stop telling your story because they want to tell their story. You can tell because they start talking the moment you're done. That's so frustrating. And I hate when they do it with a story that's not as interesting. I've run 50 miles before, and as soon as I'm done talking, they're like, I saw this guy on TV, he ran 100 miles barefoot. And I'm like, how is that? What? That's not even you. You just wanted me to stop talking so you could talk. I don't like those type of people. The second one is the worst type of people. They actually get happy when things are going bad in your life. My wife, Teresa, has a friend like this. The only time she comes around is when things are not going fantastic in Teresa's life. It's so frustrating. It's like as soon as we have a birth of a child, I get a new job, nothing. But she posts one thing about she went through cancer, she's okay now, but she posts about that and all of a sudden she's right there. Hey, what can I do for you? Then as soon as cancer treatment was done, I haven't talked to her. They're actually almost happy that things are going worse for you because it makes them feel better. So those are types of friends that we're not really looking for. What's the next slide? This is the type of friend you should look for. This is the type of friend that you should look for at school, at church, in your neighborhood, even in your family. These are the type of friends that you should look for. I have one of these friends. His name is Pastor Greg, which I think is really cool because I work with someone who's like this in my life. This verse says, as iron sharpens iron, so does one friend sharpen another. When I sit with Pastor Greg, he makes me a better version of me, which is really cool. When you guys are evaluating your friendships, when you're looking at your friend, and that's something we're doing tonight, that's what I'm saying. When you're looking at your closest friends, do they do this? Do they make you better versions of yourself? My friend Steve did not. My friend RJ did not. They didn't make me, RJ made me a better baseball player. Steve made me better at making fun of people. But they didn't make me better versions of myself. Coca, Ryan, Cowboy Greg, or Pastor Greg, no, that's what I call him. But they make me better versions of me. Because you know what they do? They ask how I'm doing, and then they just be quiet. They let me talk. How are you doing? And I get to tell them how I'm doing. They'll, one of the things that we do, we close the door, and he says, how are things going with Teresa? And that means a lot, because he actually cares. And he's not asking so he can then go home and tell his wife, yeah, guess what's going on? No, he's asking because he wants to see how I'm actually doing. And that's really great, because we haven't officially set up our accountability partnership. You have accountability partners, but that's what we are to each other. Where I can ask him how he's doing spiritually, and he will give me a straight answer. He can ask me how I'm doing spiritually, and I'm going to tell him the truth. Whether things that I'm struggling with, things that are going really well, how my relationship with the Lord is. So that's what I want this challenge to be for you guys tonight. Look at your friendships. Do they make you better? And it's a weird thing breaking up with friends. It really is. I've had to have conversations where I'm like, we're drifting apart. It's not going well. And I'm breaking up with a friend. And it's weird, but I'm like, you gotta stop texting me, man. You're not helping my life. I am not helping your life. And we're mature enough to know that. It's a weird conversation, but sometimes conversations have to happen. Go to the next slide. I like the little graphic. Oh, okay, well, that's an accountability partner. This is what accountability partner is. Someone that you can always be yourself around. I had this friend in college, his name was Tofu. It wasn't his real name. But we called him Tofu because no matter what group of friends he was in, he became just like that group. It was very frustrating. You never got to meet the real person because he just absorbed the personalities around him and became just like them. It wasn't a fun person to be around. Someone that you can always be truthful with. You know what I learned how to do really easily with when I'm hanging out with my guy friends? I can let them know about some things that are going on in my life, but not the really tough stuff. And I could disguise hey, I'm being really truthful and open with you about everything, but I'm leaving out some stuff. Accountability partner, you don't need to do that with. Someone you can be your authentic self, and someone that you don't need to lie to or impress. Now, obviously the lie to part, somebody would easily see through that, but I don't sit, with Greg and say oh, well, I read all this stuff in the Bible, he's gonna be oh man, I'm really impressed with you. That's not what that is about. So someone that you can be your authentic self with, and will be the authentic person with you. You don't want to just have people around that will just listen to because they want to hear your gossip. Someone that you can actually trust. So here at Walnut Hill we have something called crews. And if you don't have a crew, it's something that you should be seeking out diligently. Something you should be trying for. We point out this crew often. Why? Because they're doing it well. Almost every person here wants a crew like that. I would love to have 6 or 7 guy friends that I can meet with on the regular and talk about stuff, but we don't all have that. So you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for a group of friends that I can do that with right now. I have a scattered, but not a crew. If you guys don't have that, talk to your small group leaders. That would be fantastic. Find people that you can get around. And sure, it's not as easy when it's forced and when there's a leader who's putting you guys together. We get that. But if you started with a crew, maybe you would actually start opening up with them. That's the hope of crews. So that's having crews, and then accountability partner. Finding 1 or 2 people where you can actually talk to about what's going on in your life authentically. All the leaders in here, that's what we're trying for too. We want to have people that we can talk to. I can see all the leaders nodding, right? We want to have friends that we can open up and talk to, but don't wait until you're our age. Because imagine how much more you could have this closer relationship with God because you're being authentic now. So we're about to break up into our small groups, and that's what we want to talk about. What would it be like if you actually grew closer with somebody else so you could talk about how you're doing spiritually? How much closer are you going to be to our Heavenly Father? If you could be real about your time with God, if you could be real about your journaling time and, hey, some of your doubts and struggles, do you think you'd be closer or not as close if you could actually talk to somebody about it? My guess is that you would be a lot closer. So Sarah, can you come on down? Sarah's gonna do everyone into small groups and stuff. But I'm gonna pray, and I want Sarah to come down here because you see Sarah's limping. I just want to say a prayer over Sarah for her ankle. What is it? What's wrong with her ankle?
I'm hoping it's not a stress fracture.
Okay, so could be a stress fracture. So when I pray, I just want to pray for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about when we break it into our groups. We're going to go a little over time. Your parents are going to be fine with it. But we want to talk about accountability and what that really means to have authentic, deep relationships. Heavenly Father, we thank you for Sarah, and we thank you for the blessing that she is in this youth group, Lord. And we pray healing right into her ankle, that you can do amazing and wonderful things, Lord. For you to heal an ankle is no big deal, Lord. But we still pray that it's your blood running through Sarah's veins, Lord. So thank you for what you're doing for her and in her life, Lord. And thank you for what you're doing in this youth group. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, guys.